Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right in because today we're on a massive mission, fundamentally shifting exactly how you think about money. We're going to break down the core philosophy from Robert Kiyosaki's legendary Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We'll be pulling directly from the source material to show you how to completely transition from a traditional everyday employee mindset to a powerful wealth-building investor mindset. Let's get started. Okay, let's dive into this. The whole philosophy kicks off with this incredibly fascinating paradox. See, the author of our source material essentially had two fathers. His biological father, who he calls his poor dad, was highly educated, had a PhD, but he struggled financially his entire life and actually passed away in debt. But then there was his rich dad. Now, this was actually the father of his childhood best friend. This man dropped out of school at age 13, possessed very little formal education, and yet he went on to become one of the wealthiest men in his entire state. So how on earth can two such wildly different paths exist? Well, it all comes down to their deeply, deeply contrasting mindsets. It's absolutely fascinating to look at the stark dichotomy between these two worldviews. Poor Dad offered the standard, traditional advice that pretty much most of us hear growing up, right? Study hard, get good grades, find a safe, secure job with a big, reliable company, and collect a steady paycheck. It's an approach completely rooted in conventional schooling. Rich Dad, on the other hand, argued that school literally doesn't teach you a single thing about money. His advice, learn how money actually works out there in the real world and take calculated risks. He firmly believed that formal education gets you a job, sure, but real-world financial education, that builds an empire.
So that brings us to part one, escaping the rat race. Let's talk about breaking this cycle.
To really grasp why so many folks get stuck living paycheck to paycheck, we have to look at this memorable story from the text, The Donkey and the Carrot. Just imagine a man riding a donkey, right? He's dangling a carrot on a stick just an inch in front of its nose. The donkey keeps walking, keeps working, endlessly chasing that carrot because it genuinely believes it's going to catch it. But of course, it never does. The carrot is a total illusion. And for so many of us, a standard salary is exactly that carrot. We blindly chase the next paycheck or that next tiny 3% raise, thinking it'll finally bring us true wealth. But in reality, it merely traps us in an endless cycle of working for someone else.
The source material calls this vicious cycle the rat race trap. And honestly, it is entirely psychological. It always starts with fear, specifically the fear of not having enough money to pay your bills. That fear forces you out of bed and into work. But then payday hits and greed immediately takes over. You start imagining all the beautiful luxuries, the new car, the nice dinners you can suddenly afford. So you spend it. And as your income rises over the years, miraculously, your expenses rise right along with it. You're totally trapped. So I really want to ask you directly, take a second and think about this. Right now, in your life, are you working for money or is money working for you?
And this brilliantly illustrates what it means to actually make money work for you. Check out this childhood business from the text. As a kid, the author noticed that a local store clerk was tearing the covers off unsold comic books and literally throwing the rest in the trash. So he made a clever deal with the distributor to keep the coverless comics, promising he wouldn't sell them. Instead, he and a buddy opened up a comic book library in a basement. They charged all the neighborhood kids 10 cents admission to come in and read as many comics as they wanted in 2 hours. They even hired a friend's sister to manage the whole thing. They were generating $9.50 a week in pure passive income without even being physically present. They were no longer working for money. Their system was doing all the heavy lifting for them. Moving right along to section 2, assets versus liabilities. So, the crucial point here is what Rich Dad called the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. It is the most fundamental concept of building wealth, yet it's incredibly misunderstood. It all boils down to this. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out. Honestly, that's the whole shebang. It doesn't matter what your fancy accountant calls it. If it feeds you, it's an asset. If it bleeds you, it's a liability. The absolute biggest reason middle-class people struggle financially is simply because they mistakenly buy liabilities, totally convinced they are buying assets. Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown of cash flow is how perfectly it highlights the trap. Look at the middle-class cash flow. They earn a salary, and where does it immediately go? Straight into the liability column. Car loans, credit card debt, mortgages, consumer goods. The money flows in, and it just flows right back out to the bank. But look at the wealthy cash flow. The wealthy funnel their income directly into the asset column, real estate, stocks, bonds, businesses. And here's the magic.
Those assets then turn around and generate even more income, creating this incredible, self-sustaining cycle of wealth that literally doesn't rely on their daily physical labor at all.
So this naturally brings us to a highly, highly controversial question from our source. Is your house really an asset? I know conventional wisdom screams yes. We are taught from day one that our primary residence is our ultimate investment. But wait, remember the KISS principle? If you have a 30-year mortgage, if you are paying property taxes, maintenance, HOA fees, and insurance every single month, is that house putting money in your pocket or taking it out? It's taking it out. It is draining your monthly cash flow. Now, obviously, a house provides essential shelter, but financially speaking, your primary residence is a massive liability, and it's one that often prevents the middle class from having any spare cash left over to invest in true income-producing assets.
Which brings us to Part 3, Mind Your Own Business.
There's this fantastic anecdote in the text about Ray Kroc, the legendary founder of McDonald's. Back in 1974, he was speaking to a group of MBA students at a university. He casually asked the class, "What business am I in?" Well, everyone just laughed, thinking it was a joke. Finally, somebody yelled out, "Ray, everyone knows you're in the hamburger business." Ray Kroc smiled and replied, "Actually, my business is real estate." He explained to them that the primary wealth-building vehicle of McDonald's wasn't flipping burgers, it was actually buying up the incredibly lucrative land underneath every single franchise location. This highlights a completely life-altering difference. When you ask most people what their business is, they almost always reply with their profession. They'll say, "Oh, I'm a doctor," or "I'm a banker." But listen, that is your profession. That is just what you do to pay your current electric bill. Your business, according to this wealth blueprint, consists of the income-generating assets that you actually own. The source text absolutely urges you to keep your day job. Don't just quit tomorrow. But you must start minding your own business by focusing entirely on building up your asset column. Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, The Rich Invent Money. The text shares this wild, specific story to prove this exact point, that financial intelligence lets you practically pull money out of thin air. During a pretty bad economic downturn in Arizona back in the 1990s, everyone was panicking. People were selling off properties for literal pennies on the dollar. But while everyone else hid under their beds, the author used his financial literacy. He found a house valued at $60,000 that a desperate seller was willing to part with for just $20,000. He quickly locked it up in a contract, immediately placed a newspaper ad offering a $60,000 house, and found a buyer. By legally structuring that transaction, he effectively created $40,000 of pure wealth in his asset column in just 5 hours. He capitalized on a hidden opportunity that everyone else was just too scared or uneducated to even notice. That kind of bold move? That is exactly what separates your average, everyday passive investor from a true professional. According to our source, making that transition requires mastering 3 specific skills. First, you have to learn to see with your mind what others miss with their eyes, finding those hidden opportunities. Second, you have to learn how to raise capital. You don't always need to go begging to a bank if you know how to structure deals creatively. And third, organize smart people. The absolute smartest investors in the world are the ones who intentionally hire accountants, lawyers, and managers who are vastly more intelligent than they are in those specific fields. Part 5. Work to learn, not just to earn. The source recounts this incredible interaction with a highly, highly talented journalist. She desperately wanted to be a best-selling author, but her career had completely stalled out. So the author gave her some advice. Take a course in sales. Well, she was deeply offended. She believed that as a trained professional writer, learning sales was this sleazy pursuit that was totally beneath her dignity. But here's the tragic irony. Pure talent is utterly useless without the ability to sell it. The world is literally full of poor, highly talented people. To truly thrive, you have to refuse narrow specialization. You absolutely must learn the art of sales just to conquer your own fear of rejection. And you have to embrace bold financial risks early in life. And you know, the author actually practiced what he preached. After returning from his military service, he was absolutely terrified of rejection. So what did he do? He intentionally went out and took a job at Xerox selling copy machines door to door. He didn't take that job for a comfortable paycheck, and he certainly didn't take it for job security. He took it specifically because he knew he had to overcome his paralyzing fear of selling if he ever wanted to succeed in business. He worked to learn, not to earn. And once he conquered that fear and became one of their top salespeople, he quit to go build his own empire. And that brings us to our final and honestly probably the most provocative thought from today's explainer. I want you to seriously consider this direct challenge from the source material. If you stopped working today, how long could you survive? Just think about that. This perfectly cements the difference between simply having a high net worth and possessing true, lasting wealth. See, your net worth might include a whole bunch of liabilities, a fancy car, an oversized house, expensive watches, but true wealth is measured in time. It is measured by exactly how far into the future your cash flowing assets can cover your living expenses without you lifting a single finger. When your passive income finally exceeds your monthly expenses, you are completely free. You have officially escaped the rat race. Keep that question burning in your mind as you look at your own finances today. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and whatever you do, start minding your own business.